Chapter 4, The Sarajevo Spark, How a Conspiracy Ignited a Continent. For years, Europe had been a powder keg, packed with volatile alliances, nationalistic fervor, and gleaming arsenals. All that was needed was a spark. On a deceptively ordinary Sunday in the summer of 1914, in a provincial city far from the grand capitals, that spark was struck. It wasn't a calculated act of state, but a desperate, amateurish conspiracy, an act of heroic violence born of deep-seated grievances. Yet, this single assassination, fueled by the big lie that a political murder could achieve national liberation, would set in motion a chain of events, a chilling diplomatic dance, that would plunge the entire continent into its darkest hour. The fuse is lit, an archduke, a bomb, and a fatal twist. The stage for the catastrophe was set in the restive corners of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, where dreams of freedom clashed violently with the aging empire's desperate grip on power. Bosnia's boiling point, the tensions leading to the assassination. In 1908, Austria-Hungary had formally annexed Bosnia-Herzegovina, a territory with a large Serb population. This act inflamed Serbian nationalists, who viewed Bosnia as part of their rightful, unified, Greater Serbia, and considered the annexation a blatant act of aggression. For years, the region had been a boiling point, simmering with ethnic tensions, nationalist aspirations, and secret societies. Among these clandestine groups was Young Bosnia, a loose confederation of radical students and intellectuals, mostly Serbs, Croats, and Bosnian Muslims, who advocated for Bosnia's liberation from Austro-Hungarian rule, often through revolutionary means. Many within Young Bosnia were influenced by the more powerful, shadowy Serbian military intelligence group known as the Black Hand. Led by the enigmatic Colonel Dragutin Dimitrijevic, alias Apis, the Black Hand openly advocated for the unification of all South Slavs and viewed Austria-Hungary as the primary obstacle. Their motivations were a volatile mix of genuine nationalist fervor and a dangerous, big lie, that political assassination, rather than diplomacy or democratic process, could be a legitimate tool for achieving national liberation. The fateful day, Franz Ferdinand's last ride. Sunday, June 28, 1914. The sun rose over Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia-Herzegovina, a city draped in festive bunting for an imperial visit. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, arrived with his beloved wife, Sophie, Duchess of Hohenberg. The irony was bitter. Franz Ferdinand was no hardline imperialist. He harbored reformist ideas, even contemplating a triple monarchy that might grant greater autonomy to the empire's Slavic peoples. This very idea, however, terrified radical Serbian nationalists, who feared it would extinguish their dreams of a Greater Serbia. The security on that fateful day was woefully inadequate. The motorcade proceeded slowly, allowing ample opportunity for a prepared attack. Along the Appel Quay, 7 young assassins from Young Bosnia were positioned, armed with bombs and pistols provided by the Black Hand. At approximately 10:10 a.m., the first assassin, Nedeljko Kabranovic, hurled a bomb. It bounced off the Archduke's car and exploded beneath the next vehicle, injuring several officers and bystanders. The motorcade sped away, but in a fatal twist of fate, Franz Ferdinand, showing characteristic concern for the wounded, insisted on visiting them at the hospital. Around 10:45 a.m., as the Archduke's driver made a wrong turn into a side street and then paused to reverse, it put the imperial car directly in front of Gavrilo Princip, a 19-year-old Bosnian Serb. Princip, who had earlier despaired after his own bomb failed to detonate, suddenly found his target within arm's reach. He seized the moment, drawing his pistol. Human story: Princip, a slight, almost sickly young man, was deeply idealistic, consumed by nationalist passion, and utterly convinced of the righteousness of his cause. He saw himself as a liberator, not a murderer. With 2 quick shots, he sealed the fate of millions. The first bullet struck Sophie in the abdomen, killing her almost instantly. The second struck Franz Ferdinand in the neck, severing his jugular. He reportedly cried out, "Sophie, Sophie! Don't die! Live for our children, before collapsing. Within minutes, both were dead. The shocking news flashed across Europe, initially met with a mix of condolences and a sense of another Balkan incident. No one, not even Princip, could fathom the cataclysm he had just unleashed. The Blank Cheque, Germany's fatal handshake. In Vienna, the assassination was not just a tragedy, it was the ultimate provocation, providing the perfect pretext for a long-desired reckoning with Serbia. For Germany, it presented a dangerous opportunity, and their response would be the final, irreversible step towards global war. Vienna's reckoning, Austria-Hungary's desire for vengeance. In the immediate aftermath in the Austro-Hungarian capital, grief quickly hardened into a thirst for vengeance. For years, powerful figures within the empire, particularly Chief of the General Staff Konrad von Hötzendorf, had advocated for a preemptive war to crush Serbia, which they viewed as a constant threat to the empire's stability and a dangerous magnet for its Slavic minorities. The assassination of the Archduke, a direct challenge to imperial authority, provided the perfect pretext. However, Austria-Hungary was hesitant to act alone, fearing Russian intervention on behalf of Serbia. They needed a firm guarantee of support from their most powerful ally, Germany. The big lie Austria-Hungary harbored was that a decisive, localized war against Serbia could be contained, solving their internal problems without escalating into a wider European conflict. Berlin's gamble. The unconditional guarantee that sealed Europe's fate. On July 5, 1914, Austro-Hungarian emissaries met with Kaiser Wilhelm II and German Chancellor Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg in Berlin. What transpired was one of the most fateful decisions in modern history. Germany issued Austria-Hungary a blank cheque. Wilhelm and Bethmann-Hollweg assured Austria-Hungary of Germany's unconditional support, regardless of the severity of the measures Vienna chose to take against Serbia. The German leadership's strategic thinking was a catastrophic gamble, built on several big lies. Containment. They believed a swift, decisive Austro-Hungarian strike against Serbia would be too quick for other powers, especially Russia, to react effectively, or that Russia would simply back down. Deterrence. They thought a show of German resolve would deter Russian intervention, or that Russia was not yet ready for a major war. A test of alliances. They saw it as an opportunity to test the strength of the Franco-Russian alliance, hoping it would prove weak. Preemptive war. Some German military leaders welcomed the opportunity for a preemptive war, believing that war with Russia and France was inevitable anyway, and it was better to fight it now, while Germany had a military advantage. This unconditional guarantee sealed Europe's fate. It emboldened Austria-Hungary to pursue its maximalist demands against Serbia, knowing it had the full backing of Europe's strongest military power. The big lie that such an unconditional commitment would contain conflict, rather than escalate it, proved to be the most devastating miscalculation of all. The Dominoes Fall, Europe's suicide pact in 30 days. With Germany's blank cheque in hand, the diplomatic crisis spiraled, turning the assassination of an archduke into a continental catastrophe. The month that followed, from July 28 to August 4, 1914, saw Europe engage in a terrifying suicide pact, as a series of ultimatums, mobilizations, and declarations of war toppled the continent like dominoes. The ultimatum heard round the world, Austria-Hungary's impossible demands on Serbia. On July 23, almost a month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary presented Serbia with a harsh ultimatum. Its demands were deliberately humiliating and virtually impossible for any sovereign nation to accept. Suppress all anti-Austro-Hungarian propaganda. Dismantle all nationalist organizations, including the Black Hand. Dismiss specific Serbian officers and officials identified by Austria-Hungary. Crucially, allow Austro-Hungarian officials to participate in the investigation of the assassination and suppress subversive movements within Serbia. Serbia, with Russian encouragement, issued a calculated response on July 25. It accepted almost all of the demands, with the notable exception of the participation of Austro-Hungarian officials on Serbian soil, viewing it as an unacceptable breach of its sovereignty. This partial rejection, however, was enough for Vienna. The big lie Austria-Hungary clung to was that this was purely about punishing Serbia, when in reality, it was about initiating a long-desired war. Mobilization mania, armies stir, diplomats despair. The response to the Serbian reply triggered a frenzied, terrifying escalation across Europe, mobilization mania, where the complex military timetables of the various general staffs took over, overriding diplomatic efforts. July 28, Austria-Hungary, deeming Serbia's reply unsatisfactory, declared war on Serbia. Artillery barrages began almost immediately, shelling Belgrade. July 29, Russia, seeing its pan-Slavic duty and fearing Austrian expansion, ordered a partial mobilization against Austria-Hungary. This was met with frantic warnings from Germany. July 30, Russia, realizing partial mobilization was impractical, ordered a full general mobilization of its vast army. This was the big lie of strategic flexibility. Once the massive machinery of mobilization began, it was almost impossible to stop. July 31, Germany, seeing Russia's full mobilization as an act of war, sent an ultimatum to Russia, demanding demobilization within 12 hours. It also sent an ultimatum to France, demanding neutrality in a Russo-German war and control over French border fortresses as a guarantee. France refused. August 1, Germany ordered its own general mobilization and, seeing no Russian response to its ultimatum, declared war on Russia. France, responding to German mobilization, also ordered its general mobilization. Human story. Amidst this terrifying crescendo, diplomats, long accustomed to the leisurely pace of pre-war diplomacy, sent frantic telegrams, their words crackling with a desperate urgency. "The lamps are going out all over Europe, we shall not see them lit again in our lifetime," famously remarked Sir Edward Grey, Britain's Foreign Secretary, on the evening of August 3. Newspaper headlines screamed "war" in bold, stark letters, often filled with nationalistic fervor and the big lie of a swift victory, rather than the true horror that awaited. The last resort, Britain's attempt to pull back from the brink. As the continent plunged into war, Britain, initially hoping to remain aloof, made a final, desperate effort to pull back from the brink. Sir Edward Grey proposed a conference to mediate the crisis, but by then, the military timetables had taken precedence over diplomacy. Britain's primary concern shifted to the neutrality of Belgium. The 1839 Treaty of London, which Britain had signed, guaranteed Belgium's perpetual neutrality. Germany's Schlieffen Plan, however, required its armies to march through Belgium to bypass French defenses. The big lie that international treaties were sacrosanct was about to be shattered. The die is cast, declarations of war and the end of an era. The final, irreversible steps into the abyss came swiftly. August 3. Germany, implementing the Schlieffen Plan, declared war on France, accusing it of hostile acts. German troops entered Luxembourg, then Belgium. August 4, Britain, outraged by Germany's invasion of neutral Belgium and its violation of international law, issued an ultimatum to Germany demanding withdrawal. When no reply came, Britain declared war on Germany at 11 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The die was cast. The intricate web of alliances, the pervasive nationalism, the glorification of military power, and the big lies that blinded leaders and populations alike had converged. The assassination in Sarajevo, a mere spark, had ignited the continental powder keg. The lamps were indeed going out across Europe, plunging the world into a darkness that would consume an entire generation and forever alter the course of human history. The war to end all wars had begun.
The dominoes have fallen, plunging Europe into the darkness of war. In Part 2, Chapter 5, we'll witness the terrifying reality of the Western Front, where courage met its end in the mud and the grand illusions of swift victory died. If you're ready to face the unforeseen horrors of the Great War, hit that like button and subscribe. Join us for the next chapter in this gripping series, or explore the full playlist. Thank you for listening.